So it's really, really similar. You're basically just doing almost everything twice. So instead of just P equals population proportion of whatever, we have two P's that we have to name. And you can name them P1 and P2. Or some people like to name, like in this case, PK would be like proportion for Kraft, and PD would be proportion for Davis. It doesn't matter to me what you do. I usually just stick with P1 and P2, but you could do either. So I'm going to say, population, proportion of, and you can do either, you could call this, you can make P1 Kraft or Davis. And then in the end, that can like change your answer, because Kraft minus Davis would be the opposite of Davis minus Kraft. But you end up with the same p-value, you make the same conclusion. Your numbers just might be different along the way if you change the order. Yeah?
So the test doesn't, they don't care as long as you just show like two, they don't care which way.
No, they don't care which goes where.
Okay.
So I'm going to say P1 equals population proportion of Kraft's students improving plus P2 equals population proportion of Davis students improving and then HO. So we always start off assuming that everything's equal. There's no differences, that everything's just kind of status quo. So HO would be that P1 equals P2, or it could be written as P1 minus P2 equals 0. Those are really the exact same thing, right? So I think this is way easier to understand. It's easier to write. It just like seems simpler to me, and you can use that every single time, but you've got to be aware that if they write it like this, that's the same thing. HA, I think I said different, right, in the problem?
Yes.
So it would be P1 is not equal to P2, or P1 minus P2 is not equal to 0. You don't have to write both, you just pick whichever one you prefer. So the conditions, what were the conditions for a regular z-test? Assume or stated SRS, assume or stated SRS, and now you just say for both samples. Wait, I started doing like the template, didn't I?
Yeah.
Did I state SRS or did I?
Yeah.
Okay, so stated SRS for both samples. What else for z-test? Okay, so what's the point of the less than 10% of the population? Like, what goes with that you could choose instead?
Everything's independent.
The independent. So the less than 10% is trying to get at independent. Is this less than 10%? I chose 50 juniors in Kraft's integrated class. Does he have 500 juniors in that class? He does not. So then we can't use that one. And we got to go back to, okay, you got to say a couple different things. You got to say each student. So I would say it like this. Each student is independent. Each sample is independent.
So like Kraft is independent from Davis as well.
Yeah, so yes. So like Kraft and Davis are separate, and then within each of those, each of their students are separate. Okay. Then what's the last one? Yeah, the NP and then PQ and all that stuff. So it's the same thing, but you gotta do it twice. So now you got N1 times P1. So in our case, what is N1? 50, because that's Kraft sample size. What is P1? Yeah.
If they're both 50, you just put N1 and N2.
We do, yeah. I'm getting it.
You got 35 already. Oh, wait, no.
So the one is Kraft though, so
Push it
Kraft got 40 out of 50, so point 8. Why do you always yell? You get so mad when I don't. I know, but I'm waiting for like multiple people to say it. Like I want the whole class. It's not all about you.
Well, yeah, I know that. Clearly.
So then N1Q1 has to be greater than or equal to 10. N1 is still 50. What's Q1? 0.2. That equals 10, yeah. How's that so different? And then you got two more. You got to go N2P2.
A lot of writing. 50 times 0.7.
Where'd you get 0.7 from, Sid?
35 divided by 50 for Davis.
Nice.
Yeah, because nobody else said he was already right.
I'm going to start calling out anybody the second I say anyone except for So that's the probably the most annoying part about these. Is the conditions you have to do twice. That's not the monitor's fault though, that's the paper's location. Alright, so what's the first thing that goes in the math box?
Test statistic.
Test statistic. Get out your you don't have. Do you guys have formula sheets? Like readily available?
No.
Okay. That's okay. Statistic minus parameter over standard deviation of statistic. That's your general form, right? Is our wait a second, because people are writing. Is our test statistic in this case T or Z? It is Z, because we're in proportions, we're doing a Z test. Now the statistic, so when they look at the statistic of the parameter, you don't. Alright, I'm just going to write it down. So it's going to be P hat 1 minus P hat 2. This is your statistic. This is the difference between your sample proportions. Minus P1 minus P2. Make sure you realize the difference. The hat is which? The sample or the sample or the population? Hat is the sample. Without the hat is your population. Divided by, and you do not have to memorize this formula. It is on your formula sheet. I'm not going to pass them out right now or anything, but the formula for this is N1 times P1 hat. Wait, no. P1 hat times Q1 hat over N1. Remember before it was PQ over N? With the one sample Z times PQ over N. It's PQ over N twice, really. You got to separate the ones and twos. So P2 hat times Q2 hat over N2. What is Q? Q hat would be just that failures for that P hat that goes with it. So if P hat is 0.8, then Q hat is 0.2. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. How was that weird? Okay. What is P1 hat? Point 8. What is P2 hat? What's up? And then this happens every single time. What is P1 minus P2? I don't even know what P1 and P2 are, but I said up here, and this is what you go off of. I know they're the same. I'm testing whether they're the same. So when I subtract one from the other, I'm going to get 0. So this second part here will always be 0.
Can we just leave that out of the equation?
No. Well, in this part you can. You just not write the 0, but you got to show me. You got to show the math. So then this is going to be 0.1, right? Minus 0. The question is basically, is 0.1, they're 0.1 apart from each other. Me and Kraft are 0.1 away. If there was really no difference between us, we'd be 0 away. Is that 0.1 enough to convince you that he's way better than me? Or is it just like, I don't know, that just could kind of happen. So that's like the game we're playing. Is that point 1 far enough away? So then write all these in. So what's P1 hat? I just wrote it. It's point 8. Point 2. And the ends for both were 50, right? And then point 7, point 3, 50. So if you notice, that went there, and that one went there. If the point makes sense what I'm doing. Point 8 goes to the first one, point 7 goes to the second one. And then I'm not typing all that in, there's no way I'm doing that. So get your calculators. Me too.
Switch your batteries.
I don't even have enough. Yeah. You're doing, some of you are starting to get, like, go ahead and do it. That's cool. It's 2 proportion z-test is the one you want. So stat test, same place all the other ones are. And then number 6 is the 2 proportion z-test. And all they need to know is basically the 2 fractions. So x1 out of n1 is 40 out of 50. That's crap. It's like 40 improved out of 50 students. And then x2 and n2 is 35 out of 50. That's 35 out of my 50 students improved. We want not equal. And then I can calculate or draw it. So are you getting the same numbers I am? Alright? Questions on running the test or calculator issues? Alright, so then z is 1.15. How would I find the p-value? Oh, I'm sorry. Kayla, what?
I'm getting error.
Bring it up. 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 I just said if you have a calculator problem, there's no way to set a word.
Because I did this.
Oh, there's 25 people.
Yeah.
It just didn't work. You drew it.
Yeah.
So. Set something to and your calculator was working. So it calculates. We can reset your memory if you want. There's no, you don't need to draw it. There's no need to draw it because it's just not drawing. What's the problem?
Oh, well, it just doesn't draw. Yeah, mine doesn't draw.
You don't need to draw it. There's no reason you ever have to draw it. So if just yours isn't drawing, I don't care really. You shouldn't care. There's no advantage to drawing. How do I find the p-value? Normal CDF. 1.15. 999. And then what? What do I need though? So that equal to, so I'll multiply by 2. And that comes out to the 0.2482.
Sounds the same as a single.
Yeah, like the whole process is the same. We're just questions on where I'm at so far? Stop talking. You alright? You have to draw it still. I just ran out of room, but I'm gonna draw it. So alpha's 0.05. somewhere. Now in here, you gotta say P1 minus P2 equals 0. That's like your HO. We're over here. Over here, P1 hat minus P2 hat was equal to 0.1. Where am I getting that 0.1 from? Yeah. What is the market going up to? Do you guys see where I'm getting that 0.1 from?
Yeah.
So that's this right here, basically. Yeah.
You have to do the P1 minus your P2 doesn't equal 2.
Well, you're trying to put a number on a graph, right? So like the zeros we're really graphing. If you put P1 equals P2, you don't really have a number.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It's the difference between the two proportions. And then shade this part. Now this is a two-sided one, so there's the extra annoying stuff, but we gotta do that same thing on the other side.
Would you have to write P2 minus P1 there?
You could write P1 minus P2 is negative 0.1, or
Oh, so you're like right
P2 minus P1 would equal 0.1. Like if you wanted to flip it.
Do you have to flip it when you're writing the opposite side z-score?
No, just make it negative. I thought you were trying to be like fancy. I was supposed to shade that. Are there any questions on like where's this coming from? What like it's pretty much the same thing, right? It's a little more writing, more annoying. I agree with that, but like understanding wise, does it seem okay? Okay. Conclusion. Exact same process we've always done. So are we going to reject or fail to reject?
Fail.
We're going to fail to reject because the p-value is greater than alpha. So 0.248 is greater than 0.05. We fail to reject H9. There's not enough evidence support HA. And HA was the idea that we were different somehow. There's not enough evidence to support that. Meaning, we don't think crash students and Davidson students perform differently. That'd be one way to write it. So I can't necessarily say that they're the exact same, but I'm not convinced that they're different. Again, same exact like writing out process as before. We're going to reject or fail to reject HO. If there is, there's not enough evidence for HA. Then we talk about what that means. Questions on that problem anyway? Alright, let's do like a template one. So you guys have a sheet where it just kind of notes for it. So two proportions, z-test. P1 equals population proportion blah blah blah, put in context. P2 equals population proportion blah blah blah, put in context. HO, you're going to say P1 equals P2 or P1 minus P2 equals 0. It's the same thing, right? They're equal. Then when I subtract them, I should get 0. And then this box is becoming too small. HA would either be P1 is greater than, not equal to, or less than P2, or P1 minus P2 is greater than, or not equal to, or less than 0. I feel like we're basically just taking what we did and making it more annoying. Yeah. Sorry, man. Conditions. Am I going too fast, or are we okay? I'm going too fast? Alright. So conditions, you gotta say SRS, stated or assumed. Same as before, but now you're just doing it for both. Then you're going to say each sample is independent and each whatever, student, test, flower, or whatever, is independent. And for this one, you can use, you could go like N1 is less than 10% of population. N2 is less than 10% of population. But you only use that one if it makes sense. So it's kind of like your optional. Like a second ago, 50 was not less than 10% of the students in my classes, so we didn't use it. And then, N1P1 has to be bigger than 10. N1Q1 has to be bigger than or equal to 10. N2P2 has to be greater than or equal to 10. N2Q2 has to be greater than or equal to 10. So again, take it exactly what you did before and just making it more long. Alright, and the test statistic equals statistic minus parameter over standard deviation of statistic. And then if you looked up, like I know your formula sheet's not in front of you, but we're doing a 2-prophecy test. If you look it up, standard deviation for 2 proportions on your formula sheet, it's there. So it's not something you have to memorize. You can use your formula sheet on the next test or any test. I'll get them for you. I mean, I've given them to you before, but my feeling is that you do not have them anymore. But I can print them again, that's fine. So, no, it's perfectly expected. Z is going to be P1 hat minus P2 hat minus P1 minus P2, which in a second, what's the P1 minus P2 going to be? 0. It's going to be 0, but I have to write it in this part. And then this is your standard deviation. With letters in there. So you're telling them, like, hey, I know what the formula is. Alright, Nick?
Yeah, the old eyes don't look as well as they used to.
You are getting up there.
You're 18 at most.
teenagers, like because we're teenagers, our bodies are like,
More resilient.
yeah, that made me really depressed because I'm like really far away from being a teenager.
We're really depressed too. Like, feeling better.
So what's, we don't know any of the numbers. This is a template. Then you plug in the numbers. I'm just going to write plug in numbers. That will always be 0, which is nice. And then you know you need your z-score. How do I go from a z-score to a p-value? Normal CDF. So p-value equals normal CDF, whatever to whatever. When would you put a times 2 there?
If it's
It's a not equal or two-tailed.
so with the normal CDF, if it's negative second, right, for the Z or T.
If it's negative, you're going to go negative 999 up to negative that. If it's positive, you're going to go that to 999. Write down your alpha somewhere. Could have gone up higher, I guess, but I don't need space. Then I'm going to use this box to draw. So in the middle, you put P1 minus P2 equals 0. It's the 0 we're really after there. And then I'll just pretend it's like a greater than test. So over here, I would put whatever that number is, I would put Z and I would shade this little section. And if it's a two-tailed, you know, you gotta do both. Should I write both conclusions? Okay. So your options are, since p-value is greater than alpha, we fail to reject H0. There's not enough evidence to support HA. I just thought I should write A's like that because then you can tell if it's an A or no. You guys are like, we don't hear this. We don't think. Alright, maybe
We're so proud of you.
HA is. What? I was proud of that. You guys didn't see me get proud.
No, that's the same look you give to us when we tell you stuff. We just take it back.
Yeah.
Whoa!
I mean,
It's not like
it's still my dog.
like I can tell.
She's like, please don't fail me.
I was still proud of it. Or since p-value is less than alpha, we reject H0. Well, remember we're writing more than we need to because it's the template. It's still a lot though. There is enough evidence to support HA. Is that an A or a 0? Oh, that's an A. It's so easy to tell.
It is.
I think
What a
I'm
smart
just
guy.
laughing because that's kind of what I've been doing the whole time.
Meaning,
anyways.
we do think.
I think it looks like a carrot. Shut up.
Think it looks like what?
A carrot. Like you're inside.
I think you look like a carrot. I don't know what that is.
She's trying to say.
Wait.
Did you say that was racist?
Oh, of course we don't think HO is. It just says we do. Oh, okay, no, I'm reading it.
Ready to make it?
Yeah.
Alright. Questions on questions on either the example or the template piece? It's funny. homework is the